I should have known better than to stray from the trail. It was supposed to be a quick hike. Just an hour or two to clear my head, breathe in some fresh air, maybe snap a few pictures. But I took a wrong turn, distracted by the rustle of something moving just beyond the trees. And that's when I saw it, half buried under a tangle of roots, like the earth itself had tried to swallow it whole. A leather journal. Damp, rotting at the edges, but still intact. I hesitated. Something about it felt off. But curiosity has a way of overpowering common sense. The cover was cold, even in my warm hands. The first page crackled as I peeled it open. Property of Samuel Wren, it read, scrawled in shaky ink. The next line chilled me, if you find this, leave it. Don't read on. Please. I stood there for a long time, staring at those words. Logic told me to drop it, walk away, forget I ever saw it. But something in me, maybe boredom, maybe arrogance, decided otherwise. I slid the journal into my backpack and turned back toward the trail. That's when I realized I couldn't remember which way I'd come. Every direction looked the same. The forest around me felt wrong. The air was heavier, like the trees were holding their breath. And though it was the middle of the afternoon, the light was dimming, shadows stretching longer than they should have. I picked a direction and walked. About 10 minutes later, I stopped again. The sound of crunching leaves behind me froze me in place. I turned. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched was unmistakable. I needed to get out of there. Fast. I pushed through the underbrush, eventually stumbling into a clearing. That's where I decided to sit down and finally read the journal. The first few entries were simple. Samuel talked about moving into a cabin nearby, something about getting away from the noise of civilization. There were notes about the weather, about hunting, about the silence. He seemed normal. Lonely, maybe, but not disturbed. But then, the tone changed. Slowly. One entry mentioned hearing footsteps outside his cabin at night. Another, the feeling of something tapping on his windows. He wrote it off as wildlife at first. Raccoons. Maybe deer. Then he stopped making excuses. He started calling it the mimic. It knows my voice now, one entry read. It waits until I'm almost asleep, then whispers things. Sometimes it pretends to be my mother. Sometimes it just laughs. I closed the book. Suddenly, I wasn't alone in that clearing. It was dead quiet, no wind, no birds, just the sound of my own breathing. But I swear I felt something watching me from the tree-line. I shoved the journal back in my bag and took off, running until my lungs burned. Somehow, I found my way back to the trail. I don't remember how. It was like 1 second I was lost, and the next, I was staring at the wooden sign marking the start of the path. When I got home, I told myself I'd imagined most of it. Just a creepy story, a weird coincidence, nothing more. Then that night, I heard something outside my window. It said my name. That night, I didn't sleep. I locked every door and window, turned on every light in my apartment, and sat at the kitchen table with the journal in front of me. It felt wrong to even touch it now, like it carried something with it. Something old. Something patient. But I needed to know what happened to Samuel Wren. I flipped back to the beginning, past the entries I'd already skimmed. The early ones were harmless. He wrote like someone starting over, escaping something undefined. There were sketches in the margins, trees, birds, strange symbols I didn't recognize. He kept count of the days he'd been out there. At first, it seemed like a kind of peace was settling over him. Then came the 23rd entry. I heard it again last night, he wrote. Not footsteps this time. Scraping. Like nails along the walls of the cabin. It knows I'm here. I paused. I could feel the weight of his words. The kind of fear that seeps through the paper, through time. I tried to ignore it, the next page read. But then it said my name. Just once. In my own voice. I slammed the book shut. I wasn't sure what disturbed me more, the idea that something was out there mimicking him, or that he was slowly starting to believe it. I left the journal on the table and stepped away, pacing the room. But then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Written faintly on the inside back cover, almost hidden by smudges of dirt and water damage, were the words, "If it knows your name, it's already too late." I didn't want to believe it. It had to be a prank, a sick joke someone left out there to mess with hikers. But I couldn't explain what happened in the woods. I couldn't explain why, even now, I felt watched. Eventually, I sat down again. This time, I read more quickly. Each entry grew more desperate. Samuel stopped referring to the cabin as a home and started calling it a cage. He described hearing knocks on the walls every night, always 3, never more, never less. He boarded the windows, but the sound kept coming. One entry chilled me more than any so far. It was standing in the tree line tonight. Just watching. I couldn't see its face, but I know it was smiling. I stopped reading and looked around my apartment. The lights were still on. The doors were still locked. But the air felt thick, like something was pressing against the walls, trying to get in. I needed answers. I needed to know how this ended. I turned back to the journal. I started seeing things. One of the later entries read, "Shadows where there shouldn't be. I blink and they vanish. But they're always closer when I open my eyes again." He wasn't just scared anymore. He was unraveling. "I burned the symbols into the floor," he wrote. "I don't know what they mean, but they keep it out. For now." The sketches had returned, this time of a creature with elongated limbs and no face. Always just outside a cabin window. Always drawn in pencil, scratched violently into the pages like he was trying to trap it there. I flipped to the next page. Blank. I blinked and turned another. Also blank. And then another. All empty, until the very last page. There, in thick, black ink, was one final message. "It can't be destroyed. Only passed on." I stared at the words until they started to blur. My mind raced through every detail, every moment I'd experienced since finding the book. The whispers in the woods. The voice outside my window. My own name, said in my own voice. My hands trembled as I closed the journal again. I didn't want it in my home anymore. But I knew, deep down, it didn't matter. It was already too late. The next few days were a blur of paranoia. I kept the journal hidden in a drawer, wrapped in an old towel like I could smother its influence. But it didn't matter. Whatever it had brought into my life wasn't tied to the pages anymore. I started hearing things. At first, it was just creaks in the hallway or soft taps on the window, things you could explain away if you really tried. But then I'd hear breathing. Just behind me. Just out of sight. One night, I was brushing my teeth when I heard someone whisper from the hallway, "It's watching." I spun around, heart slamming against my ribs. Nothing. But the air smelled wrong. Like wet earth and rust. I went back to the journal. Samuel's descent was getting worse. "I don't sleep anymore," he wrote. "It comes closer every time I close my eyes. Last night, it was at the foot of my bed. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just waited for morning." He started describing dreams. Repeating dreams. Always the same forest, always the same figure in the distance. "It doesn't chase me," he wrote. "It waits. Like it knows I'll come to it eventually." I found myself wondering if I was having the same dreams. I hadn't remembered my sleep in days. There was one entry that stuck out, dated 2 weeks before the last one. "I found another journal," he wrote. "Buried near the well. Different handwriting. Someone else went through this. Someone else heard the voice. Their last entry was the same warning: it can't be destroyed. Only passed on. That was the moment I realized this might not be unique to me or Samuel. That maybe this thing, this mimic, had been out there for much longer. Passing from person to person. Feeding off fear, growing stronger with each new name it learned. I closed the journal and started researching. There were rumors online. Disconnected posts on obscure forums, Reddit threads that got downvoted into oblivion, mentions of something that imitated voices, lured people into the woods, appeared in dreams. But nothing solid. No answers. Just more fear. That's when the drawing started. I didn't mean to do it. I'd be on the phone, doodling on a notepad, and when I'd look down, there it was, elongated limbs, empty face, arms stretching toward a cabin window. One night, I woke up with pen ink on my fingers. I'd drawn it again, on my bedsheets, on my wall. The same creature. The same scene. I stopped leaving the house. Every knock on the door made my skin crawl. Every shadow in the corner of my eye made my stomach twist. And the voice. It wasn't outside anymore. It was inside. Not all the time. Just, sometimes. When I was most tired. Most vulnerable. It would call from the other room. "Hey, can you help me with something?" Always in the voice of someone I knew. My mom. My best friend. Once, it even sounded like my own voice. Calm. Pleasant. Familiar. I stopped answering. Samuel had tried to resist too. I could see it in his words, he didn't want to give in. But the fear wore him down. "There's no one to tell," he wrote. "No one would believe me. But the more I stay silent, the louder it gets." I knew that silence too well. I started writing my own entries. At first, just to track the events. To prove to myself I wasn't losing it. But then it became something else, something like a ritual. I hoped that writing it down would contain it, somehow. But it didn't. The knocking returned. Always 3 times. Sometimes right after I'd sit down. Sometimes in the middle of the night. Never from the same place twice. And it never left marks. That's what drove me crazy. There was never any proof. No footprints. No fingerprints. No damage to the walls or doors. Just sound. And that smell. That terrible, coppery, decaying smell. The worst part? I started to wait for it. Not because I wanted it to come, but because the silence was worse. Because at least when it knocked, I knew where it was. When it didn't, my mind filled in the blanks. Maybe it was standing behind me. Maybe it was already inside. I was losing track of time. I found food in the fridge I didn't remember buying. Clothes moved to different drawers. The shower curtain always slightly askew, no matter how many times I fixed it. I stopped looking in mirrors. I was afraid one day I'd see it standing behind me. Or worse, see myself smile back when I wasn't. I knew I couldn't go on like this. But I also knew Samuel hadn't made it out. His last entry was still pages away, and it already felt like a warning written in my own hand. The mimic wasn't a monster. It was a curse. A story that spreads by being told. And I had read every word. I tried to throw the journal away. Really tried. I wrapped it in plastic, duct taped it shut, stuffed it in an old shoebox, and marched it out to the dumpster behind my apartment building. I stood there for a long time, holding the box above the rusted bin, willing myself to let go. And then the lights in the alley flickered. Not a simple on and off blink. They pulsed. Like something breathing in rhythm with my hesitation. I dropped the box and ran. The next morning, the journal was back on my kitchen table. Unwrapped. Open to a page I hadn't seen before. I tried to throw it away too, it read. It always comes back. It wants to be read. That's when I stopped doubting. Whatever Samuel had gone through, whatever had driven him to madness, was happening to me. But worse, I could feel it speeding up. Like it had already fed on him and now it was hungry for something more. The mimic wasn't content with haunting anymore. It wanted to become. The days that followed bled together. I stopped checking the calendar. The sun barely felt like it moved across the sky anymore. I'd stare out the window and realize hours had passed without noticing. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating much either. But I was listening. That's all it wanted. To be heard. To be acknowledged. At first, it whispered from the other rooms. Then it started mimicking phone calls. I answered a call from my brother, his voice, his cadence, his stupid laugh about something from our childhood. But there was no background noise. No echo. Just emptiness. After a few seconds, he stopped speaking. There was silence on the line. And then I heard my voice. Soft. Amused. Stop pretending you don't know me. We've met before. I threw the phone across the room. But the worst moment, the one that truly broke me, was when I looked out the window and saw myself standing on the sidewalk. It wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't my reflection. It was me, staring up at the window, wearing the same clothes I had on the day I found the journal. My expression was blank. Unblinking. Still. And then I smiled. Not a warm smile. Not one of recognition. It was a predator's grin. The kind of smile you see in a nightmare just before waking up. Except I didn't wake up. I closed the blinds and backed away. That's when I heard the knock. 3 times. Always 3. It was coming from the closet this time. I didn't open it. I didn't speak. I just sat on the floor and held my knees to my chest until the sound stopped. The next morning, the smile in the mirror was wrong. Too wide. Too perfect. My eyes blinked out of sync. I smashed the mirror. Every moment after that, I felt like I was living a copy of Samuel's life. His journal became a script, and my world, the set. I found scratches on the inside of my bedroom door. I don't remember making them. They matched the one Samuel drew, 3 vertical gouges, like something with claws had scraped to be let out. The mimic was no longer pretending to be outside. It was me. I'd catch myself doing things without realizing it. Writing the same sentence over and over, I hear it. I hear it. I hear it. Dozens of pages filled with those words. Drawings of eyes. Hundreds of eyes. I think it was watching through me. That's the real terror of the mimic. It doesn't just stalk or scare. It copies. It replaces. I started recording myself while I slept. The footage made my blood run cold. Every night, sometime around 3 a.m., I'd sit up. Just sit there, eyes wide, staring at the camera. Motionless. For hours. Then I'd smile. I never remembered doing it. One night, I whispered something. I played it back a dozen times before I understood it. I'm almost ready. Ready for what? I didn't want to know. But I did. Samuel had been ready too. He just hadn't known it. And I was following every step. The last few pages of his journal weren't written in words. They were symbols. Dozens of them, carved into the paper. Some pages were torn, others burned around the edges. It was like he tried to destroy it, only to change his mind at the last second. But one sentence remained, circled over and over. The only way out is in. That line haunted me more than anything. I began to understand. You don't escape the mimic. You become it. You take on the story, the burden, the hunger. And when it's your time, you write your own journal. You pass it on. You wait in the woods. You watch. And you smile. I didn't want to read the last page. Even before I reached it, I felt its weight pressing against the back of the journal like something waiting to be let out. The pages leading up to it had become nearly unreadable, covered in erratic scribbles, symbols layered over symbols, smeared ink, and jagged carvings. Samuel's handwriting had shifted too. It was no longer careful or thoughtful. It was desperate. Violent. I flipped through them with trembling fingers, each one more chaotic than the last, until I found it. The final entry. Unlike the others, it was scrawled in thick, black marker that had bled through the page. There were no dates. No introduction. Just a message. I see it now. It's not outside. It's not following. It's been here all along. Watching through me. Breathing through me. Waiting. I thought I could resist, but the truth is, I was chosen. And so are you. My throat went dry. There was more beneath that. A kind of chant. Repeated over and over in a looping pattern, circling the page. Name it. Know it. Become it. Name it. Know it. Become it. Name it. Know it. Become it. The ink grew heavier toward the center, like he was forcing the words deeper into the paper. Almost like he believed the repetition would trap it, or summon it. That's when I heard the knock. 3 times. But this time, it wasn't from a door. It was from the wall behind me. I turned slowly. Nothing. No damage. No holes. Just drywall and silence. But the air felt like ice. My breath came in clouds, and every hair on my body stood up. I backed away, clutching the journal to my chest, and that's when I noticed something else. The entry, it was still wet. The ink hadn't dried. I touched it, and my fingertip came away black. I staggered to the sink, trying to wash it off. But it wouldn't come off. The black stain had soaked into my skin like oil, spreading down my hand, clinging to every crease. And then the voices started. Not whispers. Voices. Clear and direct. Dozens of them. From the journal. From the walls. From me. They spoke in unison. In chorus. Name it. Know it. Become it. I dropped the journal. It hit the floor with a wet smack, like it was bleeding. I stared at it, heart pounding, until I couldn't take it anymore. I picked it up and threw it into the fireplace. The flames caught quickly, too quickly. The pages turned black and curled like dry leaves, but no ash formed. The fire grew cold. A dead, icy blue that crackled without heat. And then it went out. The journal was untouched. Not a single mark of burn. I fell to my knees. This was never a story I could finish. It finishes me. That night, I dreamed of the forest again. But this time, I wasn't lost. I knew exactly where I was going. I followed the path Samuel had once walked, my feet moving without instruction, drawn by a pull I couldn't resist. The trees whispered my name. The air smelled like rot and memory. And at the center of it all, there was the cabin. Old. Sagging. Covered in moss. Just like in the sketches. Inside, the room was empty except for a desk. On the desk, a mirror. And in the mirror, myself. Only it wasn't. Its eyes were too dark. Its smile, too wide. It raised its hand before I could, waved to me, and whispered. "You're ready now." I woke up screaming. But the scream didn't stop. It echoed around the room for several seconds longer than it should have. And then it was mimicked. Perfectly. From the hallway. I stopped sleeping after that. I stopped writing too. Every time I tried, my hand would cramp. My thoughts wouldn't form into words. The only thing I could manage were drawings, horrible, feverish drawings of the mimic in different places, behind me at the grocery store, in the reflection of a puddle, standing at the edge of my bed. And then I found the new page. Inserted in the middle of the journal where there hadn't been one before. It wasn't written by Samuel. It was written by me. Same handwriting. Same turn of phrase. But I had no memory of writing it. It's not trying to haunt you. It's trying to become you. The moment you speak of it, the moment you let others hear it, that's when it takes shape. That's when the next chapter begins. I closed the journal and didn't open it again. I couldn't. Because now, I understood. The mimic isn't a monster. It's a memory. A story that needs to be remembered to exist. It passes from person to person not through touch, not through blood, but through retelling. And now that I've told you, now that you've heard it, it knows your name too. I tried to leave. I packed a bag, grabbed my keys, and drove. No direction in mind, just away. Far from the journal. Far from the apartment. Far from whatever had taken root inside me. But the highway stretched on endlessly. No matter how many miles I drove, the scenery didn't change. Same cracked road. Same sagging trees. Same crow sitting on the power line, watching me pass again and again. I checked the odometer. I'd been driving for hours, but I hadn't gone more than 5 miles. It wouldn't let me go. I pulled into a gas station that shouldn't have been there. No signs. No pumps. Just a building, lights flickering. Inside, the shelves were bare except for a single object on the counter. The journal. Open to the middle. My handwriting on the left. Samuel's on the right. I backed out, heart racing, and ran to the car. But it wasn't my car anymore. It was his. The same truck Samuel had described in one of his early entries. Same rusted bumper. Same cracked windshield. The mimic wasn't chasing me. It was consuming me. Piece by piece. I stopped trying to fight it. Instead, I did what Samuel never could. I went back to the woods. Back to where I first found the journal. I didn't bring food. Or water. Or a flashlight. Just the book. Just my voice. And I read every page aloud. Every word. Samuel's. Mine. Even the ones I didn't remember writing. And when I finished, I spoke to the trees. I know what you are now. There was silence. And then, movement. Not footsteps. Not wind. Just the subtle sound of everything holding its breath. And then, for the first time, a voice that wasn't mimicking. You were always meant to return. It was ancient. Echoing. It didn't come from behind me. It came from within me.